The desperate Plath sun had just begun to set, casting an orange glow over the quiet town. Streets that were usually filled with the sounds of children playing and cars driving by now seemed oddly silent. The cold wind blew gently, making the trees sway in the distance. On the outskirts of town, near the old woods, a strange hum filled the air. John was walking home from work when he heard it, a soft, eerie hum in the distance. He stopped and looked around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The sound seemed to come from above. He squinted and looked up, but the sky was clear. There was nothing there. At least, that's what he thought. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in the sky, and John's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a plane, and it wasn't a star. The light was moving too fast. It darted from one side of the sky to the other in a way no aircraft could. The light grew brighter and larger until John could hear a low, thunderous sound. His legs froze in place as he watched the shape of a spacecraft emerge from the clouds. The ship was huge. Its shape was like nothing John had ever seen, not in movies, not in books. It was silver and glowing, and it seemed to hover effortlessly above the trees. The hum grew louder, and John's instincts screamed at him to run, to get to safety. But his feet felt like they were glued to the ground. Then, to his shock, the ship slowly began to descend, landing quietly on the snow-covered ground just a few hundred feet away from him. The craft was so close now that John could see the intricate designs etched into its surface. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His mind raced with questions, but before he could think of anything else, a small figure appeared from behind the ship. It was a woman, but not like any woman John had ever seen. She had pale, almost translucent skin, and her hair was long, flowing, and white as snow. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she seemed to be looking for something or someone. The woman wore a simple, flowing gown made of fabric that shimmered in the light, and she looked as if she had been through something unimaginable. John's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to turn and run, but something stopped him. She wasn't like anyone he had ever seen. There was something about her, a feeling of urgency in her movements. She walked quickly toward him, her gaze locking onto his as if she knew he was the only one who could help her. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "You have to help me. Please, save my daughter." John took a step back, unsure of what to do. Was she asking him for help? His brain screamed that he should run, that this wasn't safe, that whatever she was, whatever was happening, he needed to stay far away. But he couldn't make himself move. The woman dropped to her knees in front of him, her hands clasped together in a desperate plea. "I'll do anything," she begged. "Please, I'll do anything if you save her. They're coming for her." John's eyes darted nervously between her and the ship behind her. What was going on? Who was she? Who was coming for her daughter? He wanted to ask a million questions, but all he could manage to say was, "What? What do you mean?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear and sorrow. "My daughter is the last of her kind. They want her because she holds the key to something powerful. They want to destroy her." The weight of her words sank into John's chest, making it hard to breathe. Her daughter, what was she talking about? How could he help? This was too much. His mind raced with confusion, but in that moment, something inside him knew he couldn't just walk away. Before he could speak again, the sound of engines roaring to life cut through the quiet. John's eyes snapped up to see the spacecraft's engines glowing brightly as it slowly lifted off the ground. A feeling of dread washed over him, and he turned back to the woman. "They're here," she whispered, fear in her voice. Please. You have to save her. She's just a child. Please help me. A small figure emerged from behind the woman. It was a girl, barely 5 years old, with the same pale skin and silver-white hair. She wore a black dress that contrasted sharply against the snowy ground. Her wide, innocent eyes stared up at John as she held onto the woman's hand. The little girl took a step forward and looked at him with a sad smile. Please, she whispered, help me. John could hardly believe what he was seeing. It was like something out of a science fiction story, yet there was no denying what was in front of him. A child, an alien child. As the craft hovered higher, the sound of other ships filled the air. He could see them now, dark figures flying toward them from the distance. The woman's eyes grew even wider in panic. Please, she begged again. They're coming. You have to help us. John stood frozen, caught between fear and something else, something he couldn't explain. He didn't know what to do, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed. Forever. The desperate alien mother's plea hung in the air as the ships closed in. The child's secret the night had fallen completely, and the small town was now bathed in an eerie silence. The once peaceful streets were now filled with the distant hum of hovering spacecraft. John stood motionless, unable to move, his mind racing with questions. The woman's plea still echoed in his ears. Please, save my daughter. I'll do anything. As the craft in front of him slowly descended, the alien mother pulled the young girl closer, shielding her with her arms. The girl, with her wide eyes full of innocence, clutched her mother's hand tightly. Her small fingers trembled, but there was a strange calm about her, like she knew something John didn't. They're coming, the woman whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. They'll stop at nothing to take her. John's throat felt dry. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to run, to get as far away from all of this as possible. But something about the woman's desperation, the quiet terror in her eyes, kept him frozen to the spot. He took a shaky step forward, wanting to ask more questions, but unable to form the words. Finally, the alien mother spoke again, her voice trembling but steady. She's not just any child, she began, looking at the little girl who stood beside her. My daughter, ... She is the last of her kind, the last of the Amari, the most powerful beings in the galaxy. John blinked, trying to process what she had just said. The Amari. He had never heard of them. What did she mean by powerful? And why was her daughter being hunted? I don't understand, he said quietly, his voice shaky. What does she mean to them? Why are they after her? The woman's eyes welled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, trying to remain strong. The Amari were once a peaceful race, she said, her voice filled with sorrow. We lived in harmony with many other species, working together to bring balance to the galaxy. But then, ... something changed. A dark force came, and it consumed our people. We fought back, but we were outmatched. The Amari are no longer many. Only a handful remain, scattered across the universe. She paused, taking a deep breath. My Daughter. She is the key to our survival. The key to bring in the Amari back. She has abilities, powers that no one else in the galaxy possesses. And there are those who will stop at nothing to control her. John's mind raced as he tried to process her words. Powers? What kind of powers? And why was her daughter the only one left with these abilities? Why me? John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why did you come to me? The woman's gaze softened, as if the answer was something she had been dreading to say. You are human, and you are the only one who can protect her. The others, they will never understand. But you, John, you have something that they don't, something pure. John didn't understand what she meant by something pure. But before he could ask more, the sound of engines grew louder, closer. His heart raced as he looked up, seeing a fleet of ships in the distance. They were coming for them. Please, the woman begged, her voice urgent. You must help us. We don't have much time. John's heart pounded in his chest. The night sky was now filled with the silhouettes of the approaching ships. There was no way to outrun them. He could feel the weight of her words, the desperation in her eyes, and the burden of the responsibility she was placing on him. What do you need me to do? He finally asked, his voice shaking. The woman nodded, relief flashing in her eyes. You must take her somewhere safe. There's a place, far from here, hidden in the mountains. It's the only place where she can be protected, where they won't find her. John glanced at the little girl, her innocent face filled with worry. This was insane, he thought. None of this makes sense. But looking into her eyes, he felt something he couldn't explain. A need to protect her, to help them. The ships were closer now, their bright lights piercing the darkness. The woman grabbed John's arm, her grip strong. We don't have much time. Please, take her, save her. John looked back at the alien mother and the child, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had to do. The woman's words rang in his ears, the last of her kind. He had no choice. He had to help them. The first ship touched down just a few 100 feet away, its engines hissing as it landed on the snowy ground. The faint sound of footsteps could be heard as figures emerged from the craft. Moving swiftly toward them, John turned and grabbed the little girl's hand. Come on, he whispered, his voice tense. Let's go. With the alien mother leading the way, John followed, feeling the weight of the galaxy itself on his shoulders. The fate of a child, an entire species, was now in his hands. As the trio made their way into the woods, the sound of the approaching fleet grew louder, echoing in the stillness of the night. The hunt begins. The dense trees of the forest loomed ahead, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. John moved quickly, his heart racing with fear and uncertainty. The alien mother, her face set with determination, led the way, her pace steady despite the urgency. She held the little girl's hand tightly, as though the child's life depended on every step they took. John could feel the cold air biting at his skin. But it wasn't the chill of the night that made him shiver, it was the knowledge that they were being hunted. The distant hum of engines was still there, lingering in the air like a constant reminder of the danger closing in on them. Where are we going? John asked, his voice low, barely above a whisper. The alien mother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes filled with a quiet fear. We're going to a place far from here, hidden deep in the mountains, she said, her voice urgent. It's the only place where they can't find us. John nodded, but his mind was racing. He didn't understand any of this. Alien powers, a child being hunted, a dark force after the myth was all too much. He wanted to ask more questions, to get answers that made sense. But the woman's gaze told him there wasn't time. The trees thinned out, and they emerged into a clearing. The wind howled through the open space, and John could see the dark silhouette of the mountains rising in the distance. But before they could take another step, a flash of light caught John's eye. He froze, turning his head just in time to see a shadowy figure appear at the edge of the clearing. It was a figure clad in dark armor, its surface reflecting the dim light of the moon. He stood tall and unmoving, his eyes hidden beneath a visor. John's breath caught in his throat. They had been found. The alien mother quickly pulled the little girl behind her, stepping in front of John as if to protect him. "Get behind me," she whispered, her voice low but firm. John obeyed, moving quickly to stand behind her. His heart pounded in his chest, and every instinct screamed at him to run, to get as far away from the armored figure as possible. But there was nowhere to go. The man stood like a wall between them and their escape. The armored figure took a step forward, his boots crunching in the snow. "You can't hide from us," he said, his voice cold and mechanical, devoid of emotion. "You know why we're here." The alien mother's eyes narrowed, her expression fierce. "You will not take her," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that John could see in her eyes. "I will protect her with my life." The figure tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "You think you can stop us? You are no match for what we are. She is ours." John's mind raced. Who were they? What did they want with the little girl? His pulse quickened as he felt a growing sense of helplessness. What could he do? He was just a human, and this was far beyond anything he could have imagined. The alien mother raised her hands, her fingers glowing faintly as if charged with some kind of energy. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and for a moment John could swear he saw a faint, glowing shield appear between them and the armored figure. It was as though she was preparing for a fight, ready to do whatever it took to protect her daughter. But the figure didn't move, his stance unwavering. "You cannot fight us," he said, his voice now a chilling whisper. "We are everywhere. Your resistance will be futile." John glanced at the alien mother, then at the little girl. The child looked up at him, her innocent eyes filled with a quiet understanding. She wasn't scared, not in the way John expected. She looked as though she knew exactly what was happening and had accepted it, as if she had been prepared for this moment her entire life. "What are they?" John asked quietly, his voice filled with fear and confusion. "They are hunters," the alien mother replied, her voice barely audible. "The ones who seek to control my people, to wipe us out. They will stop at nothing to capture her." John's mind raced. The hunters. He had seen them. The figure in front of him was just one of many, part of a larger force that seemed to stretch across the stars. What was this dark force they were fighting against, and why was the little girl so important? The armored figure took another step forward, his hands slowly reaching for the weapon strapped to his side. It was sleek, futuristic, and deadly. John's stomach tightened. The alien mother's eyes flickered, and in an instant, her hands glowed brighter, the energy around her intensifying. The air hummed with power, and John felt a strange pull, as though the very world around them was holding its breath. "Run," she whispered urgently to John. "Get her to safety. I'll hold them off." Before John could protest, the alien mother stepped forward, raising her hands in a defensive stance. Her eyes were focused, unwavering, as she prepared to face the threat head-on. The figure smirked, clearly unfazed by her defiance. "You're wasting your time," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The child will be ours, no matter what you do." John hesitated for a moment, but then, seeing the determination in the alien mother's eyes, he turned and grabbed the little girl's hand. "Come on," he whispered. "We have to go." The two of them began to run, the sound of the armored figures' footsteps growing fainter behind them. The alien mother's energy crackled in the air as she stood her ground, a protective barrier between John and the hunters. But the road ahead was still uncertain. The hunt had just begun. The unlikely alliance, the night seemed endless as John and the alien girl hurried through the dense woods. The cold air bit at their faces, but there was no time to feel the chill. They moved swiftly, stepping over roots and rocks, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The girl, though small and fragile-looking, moved with surprising agility, her delicate frame not slowing them down at all. John couldn't help but glance at her every few moments, her pale skin, her silver-white hair, and those eyes that seemed to carry the weight of something far beyond her years. As they moved deeper into the forest, John's mind raced with questions. The alien mother's warning echoed in his head. They will stop at nothing to take her. But who were they? Why was this child so important? And why had they come to him for help? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, eerie silence. The usual sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl had all disappeared. It was as if the very air had frozen in place. "Something's wrong," John muttered, stopping in his tracks. The little girl squeezed, his hand tighter, her eyes wide with unease. She glanced around, her small body tense. John felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. It wasn't the temperature that had changed, was the feeling of being watched. Before he could say anything more, a flash of movement in the trees caught his eye. Figures appeared, dark shapes darting between the trunks, moving too fast for John to make out clearly. His heart skipped a beat. "Stay close to me," he whispered to the girl, pulling her gently behind him. They didn't have much time. The figures were closing in, their silhouettes becoming clearer with each passing second. John's pulse quickened, and a sense of dread washed over him. They weren't alone anymore. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged a new figure, different from the hunters they had just fled. This one was smaller, slimmer, with eyes that glowed a faint green. It was an alien one who looked like no other being John had seen before. The alien's skin was a deep shade of blue, and its face was framed by long, dark tendrils that seemed to sway with the wind. The alien didn't seem to have the same aggressive stance as the hunters. Instead, it raised its hands in a peaceful gesture, a sign of no threat. "I mean no harm," the alien said, its voice surprisingly calm and melodic. John tensed, still unsure whether to trust this new figure. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice filled with suspicion. The alien's glowing eyes focused on him for a moment before it spoke again. "I am called Jannar. I come to offer you help." John didn't lower his guard. "Help? Why should I trust you?" Jannar took a step closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "Because we have a common enemy." John glanced at the little girl, who was now standing quietly beside him. She didn't seem frightened of Jannar. In fact, she seemed to recognize him. "Your daughter," Jannar continued, "is not the only one being hunted. There are others like her, children of the stars, born with powers that others covet. I know what they are after, and I know how to protect her." John's eyebrows furrowed. "You know who they are? Who's hunting her?" Jannar nodded solemnly. "Yes, they are called the Skaar, a ruthless faction bent on controlling all that is powerful in the universe. The child, your companion, is one of the last of the Amari, and the Skaar want her to serve their own dark purposes." The mention of the Skaar sent a shiver down John's spine. He had heard rumors of powerful factions battling for control of the universe, but he never thought he'd be caught up in it. And now, in front of him, was a stranger alien offering him help. "I don't understand," John said, his voice growing more frustrated. "Why should I trust you? How do I know you're not working with them?" Jannar paused, his eyes glowing brighter for a moment. "I have no love for the Skaar. They are the ones who destroyed my homeworld. They are the reason I now wander the stars, seeking a way to stop them. But I know the way. I know how to hide her." Jon looked at the little girl, who was still. Holding his hand, her innocent eyes met his, and for the first time, he realized she wasn't just a child. She was part of something much bigger, something that went beyond what he could comprehend. "Why would you help us?" Jon asked, his voice still filled with doubt. Jannar's expression softened. "Because I owe a debt, and because I see in her the future of my people, the future of the universe itself." Jon's mind spun. The truth seemed too far-fetched, too outlandish. Yet, standing here with this alien, the threat of the Skaar growing closer with each passing second, he knew he had no choice but to listen. "We need to move," Jannar urged, glancing nervously into the trees. "The Skaar will be here soon. We must find a place to hide." Jon hesitated, looking at the alien mother, whose eyes were now filled with a mix of hope and fear. She too seemed to recognize Jannar and the truth in his words. She nodded slightly, her silent approval enough to push Jon forward. With no other option left, Jon turned to the little girl and took her hand again. "Let's go," he said. Jannar led the way, moving swiftly and silently through the trees. Jon followed closely behind, his mind still reeling with the gravity of the situation. The forest around them was now a maze of shadows and whispers. The Skaar were closing in, but for the moment, Jon had to trust that Jannar would lead them to safety as they ran. A faint glow illuminated the path ahead, a hidden refuge, far from the reach of their pursuers. But they knew that the peace would be short-lived. The hunt had only just begun. The escape the forest stretched on endlessly, the moonlight barely breaking through the thick canopy above. The path that Jannar led them down was narrow and winding, barely noticeable against the natural landscape. Jon's footsteps crunched. On the frozen ground, the snow beneath him almost silent, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Jannar moved ahead, his form lit only by the faint glow of his eyes. His presence was quiet but commanding, like someone who had long been accustomed to living in the shadows, hidden from the enemy. Jon tried to keep up, but every step felt like a race against time. The Skaar were coming. The thrum of their engines echoed in the distance, a constant reminder that they were being hunted. The alien mother, her pale face tense with worry, walked closely behind him, clutching her daughter's hand tightly. The little girl walked with surprising calm, her eyes still as wide as they were when Jon had first met her. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence alone carried a weight that Jon couldn't ignore. The further they went, the deeper into the woods they seemed to sink. The air grew colder, the trees taller, more ancient-looking, as if they were entering a different world entirely. Jon could feel the oppressive silence that seemed to surround them, an unnatural quiet, like something was watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. "We're almost there." Jannar's voice cut through the tension, low and confident. "There's a cave up ahead. We can hide there." Jon nodded, though his mind was still clouded with questions. Where were they going? How could they possibly escape this hunt? He glanced over his shoulder once more, his eyes scanning the trees, for any sign of pursuit. The distant hum of the Skaar ships was growing louder, closer. Time was running out. As they approached the cave, Jannar moved swiftly, signaling them to follow. Jon pushed forward, his legs aching from the constant movement. The little girl was still walking silently beside him, her hand in his, her gaze fixed on the ground ahead of her. They reached the entrance of the cave, and Jannar turned to face them. His expression was serious. "Stay close to the walls. The cave is rigged with defenses. It will keep them out, but only for so long." John looked at the entrance to the cave. It was dark, and he could hear the distant echo of dripping water within. The walls of the cave were jagged, the rocks sharp and uneven. It wasn't the most inviting place, but it was their only chance. They had no time to waste. "Are we safe here?" John asked, his voice tight. "For now," Jannar said, "but it won't last long. The Skaar are relentless. They won't stop until they have what they want." John nodded, though a knot of fear tightened in his chest. He wanted to believe they were safe, wanted to believe that they could finally catch their breath. But deep down, he knew that safety was a fleeting illusion. The real fight was just beginning. As they entered the cave, the cold air inside hit them like a wall. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the walls, and the silence seemed even more oppressive in here. Jannar led them to a small, hidden alcove at the back of the cave, a place where they could take cover. John helped the alien mother and daughter settle in, leaning against the rock walls. The little girl sat down, her eyes still wide, watching him intently. She seemed calm, but John couldn't shake the feeling that she was carrying a weight far heavier than any of them understood. "What happens now?" John asked, his voice low. Jannar's glowing eyes flickered in the darkness. "Now we wait." John wasn't sure if that was a relief or a curse. Waiting meant they were safe for a moment, but it also meant that the danger was still there, just outside the cave, lurking in the shadows. The alien mother leaned in close to John, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You don't know it yet, but you're the key to her survival. You're her protector now." John's chest tightened. He hadn't asked for any of this. He hadn't asked to be part of an intergalactic war. He had only wanted to live a simple life, to go to work and come home like everyone else. But now, here he was, protecting a child from a dark force he couldn't even begin to understand. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "You can," the alien mother said firmly, her eyes locking with his. "You already are." Before John could respond, a faint sound broke through the silence, a distant hum, growing louder. The Skaar ships were close, too close. Jannar's eyes narrowed, his body tense with alertness. "It's time," Jannar whispered. "They've found us." John felt his heart race. The escape had been too short, too easy. They hadn't been able to run far enough. He turned to the alien mother, who was already standing, her face grim. The little girl stood beside her, her small hand clutching her mother's. For a moment, time seemed to slow as the weight of their situation settled over him. They were running out of time. The Skaar were closing in, but they couldn't stop. Now, Jannar gave a quick nod. "Prepare yourselves. We fight to survive." John felt the fear rising inside him, but he also felt something else, determination. They had made it this far. They weren't going to let the Skaar take them now. The hunt had begun, and this time they would fight back. The ultimate betrayal. The air inside the cave was thick with tension as John, the alien mother, and the little girl huddled together. Jannar stood by the entrance, his sharp eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. His glowing gaze flickered, alert and watchful. Every now and then, a soft tremor would vibrate through the walls. signaling that the Skaar ships were drawing closer. "We don't have much time," Jannar muttered, his voice low but urgent. "They will breach the cave in minutes. We must act now." John's heart raced. The reality of their situation was becoming all too clear. They were outnumbered, and the Skaar were relentless. He looked at the alien mother, whose face was set, with a quiet determination, as though she had been through battles far worse than this one. "What's the plan?" John asked, his voice rough with anxiety. He wasn't a soldier, but he couldn't just sit back and wait for them to be caught. Xanar's eyes flickered toward the small alcove they had taken shelter in. "We need to distract them, keep them occupied long enough for the child to escape." John froze. "What do you mean, escape?" he asked, his voice rising with panic. "She's just a little girl." "She's the key to everything," Jannar replied, his voice grim. "Without her, the Skaar will dominate this galaxy. We must protect her at all costs, even if it means sacrificing ourselves." The alien mother stepped forward, her eyes steady as she looked at John. "We will not leave her behind. We fight together. We are her protectors." John swallowed hard. He had no training, no experience in combat. Yet somehow he knew that running wasn't an option anymore. They were at war, and he was in the middle of it. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him, but for the first time he felt the stirrings of courage. He had to protect her. "All right," John said, his voice firm. "Let's do this." Jannar nodded, his glowing eyes scanning the cave's entrance once more. "We must create a diversion, a distraction that will give you enough time to get her to safety." John and the alien mother exchanged glances. She placed a hand on his arm, her touch soft but reassuring. "You'll do fine. Just stay with her." John nodded, his throat tight. He turned toward the little girl who had been silent throughout the conversation. Her wide, innocent eyes met his, and in them he saw something unexpected, a glimmer of hope. She trusted him. She believed he could protect her. The hum of the approaching Skaar ships grew louder, now accompanied by the faint sound of footsteps, to many of them marching in unison. The tension in the cave was unbearable. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. "We have to move now," Jannar urged, his voice sharp. John nodded again, stepping toward the back of the cave, with the alien mother and the child close behind. As they moved, Jannar activated a device on his wrist, which glowed briefly before sending out a high-pitched signal that echoed through the cave. "Get to the back," Jannar ordered, his voice filled with urgency. "Hide in the shadows." John hurried to obey, but as he did, a sudden realization hit him. There was something wrong. Something in the way Jannar had spoken. The urgency, the desperation, wasn't just about survival. John's eyes flickered toward Jannar, whose back was turned as he focused on the approaching enemy. There was something off about the alien's posture, a strange tension in the way his body moved. John's heart skipped a beat. He realized with a shock that Jannar wasn't just trying to protect them. He was setting them up. Before John could react, Jannar spun around, his glowing eyes flashing with a sudden, cruel light. "You thought I was your ally," Jannar sneered. "Foolish humans." John's blood ran cold. The alien mother gasped, her face going pale. "What is this?" Jannar's expression twisted into a wicked smile, his hands glowing with the same energy John had seen earlier. "I was never on your side," he said, his voice now dark and twisted. "I was sent to bring the child to the Skaar. I've been playing you from the start." John felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. "No," he whispered, You're one of them. Jannar chuckled darkly, his eyes narrowing with malice. Did you really think an alien like me would care about your pitiful human morals? The Skaar promised me power. They promised me that with her, we would rule this galaxy together. The alien mother stepped forward, her face a mask of fury and betrayal. You coward, she spat. You betrayed us all. You lied to us. Jannar shrugged, his tone casual. It's business. You should have known better than to trust someone like me. John's hands clenched into fists. His mind raced, trying to process the betrayal, but it was clear now. They had been duped. Jannar wasn't there. Allahi was the enemy. I won't let you take her, John said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding in his chest. Jannar's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. You'll try, but you won't succeed. Before John could react, Jannar raised his hands, and a burst of energy shot toward them. John barely had time to react, pushing the alien mother and child out of the way just as the energy blast hit the ground where they had been standing. The cave shook, and dust fell from the ceiling, blocking their view for a moment. When the dust cleared, Jannar was standing there, grinning with a cruel satisfaction. We'll see how long you last now, he sneered. John had no time to waste. The betrayal had shattered his last hopes of safety. He had no choice now. There was no running, no hiding, only survival. He turned to the alien mother, who was now glaring at Jannar, her fists clenched. We need to fight back, she said, her voice low but filled with fury. Let's finish this, John said, his resolve hardening. They had come too far to give up now. The battle for their lives and for the future was far from over. The final choice, the cave, was still, save for the echoing crackles of energy around them. The air felt thick with the weight of betrayal, and the ground beneath John's feet seemed to tremble with every heartbeat. Jannar's cruel smile was still burned into his mind as he processed what had just happened. The alien they had trusted, the one who had promised to help them escape, had now turned against them. Betrayal cut deeper than any wound John had ever known. We can't stay here, the alien mother said sharply, her voice shaking with both fury and fear. We have to move, now. John nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities of their next move. Jannar had set them up, but he wasn't the only one with power. The alien mother had powers of her own. They could still fight. They could still escape. But as the distant hum of the Skaar ships grew louder, John knew that time was running out. Their options were limited. The Skaar were closing in, and John and his false allies likely already contacting them to lead them straight to the cave. Where can we go? John asked, his voice tight. There's another exit. The alien mother replied, her face hardening as she scanned the cave. It's hidden, but we need to reach it before they find us. She moved quickly, her eyes scanning the walls of the cave. Her hands brushed over the rocks, pressing certain stones, causing a faint rumbling sound. A section of the cave wall slid back, revealing a narrow, winding passage. It was dark, with only the faintest flicker of light coming from cracks in the stone, but it was their only chance. We need to go, now, the alien mother urged, grabbing the little girl's hand and pulling her gently toward the passage. John followed them, his heart still pounding. The betrayal weighed on him, but he knew they had to keep moving. He had no choice but to protect them, even if they were running straight into the unknown. As they entered the passage, the walls grew tighter, and the air grew colder. The light from outside faded as they moved deeper into the cave's hidden corridors. It felt like they were entering the heart of the earth itself. far away from the noise and chaos of the outside world. But it wasn't enough to ease John's growing sense of dread. "They're coming," the alien mother said under her breath, her voice strained with urgency. John could hear it now, footsteps, faint at first, then growing louder. The sound of boots crunching against the snow, the distant hum of engines, and the eerie wail of the Skaar ships in the sky. They weren't far behind. "We won't make it," John muttered, his voice filled with despair. "We will," the alien mother snapped, her voice stronger than before. "We have no choice. We're not giving up. Not after everything we've been through." Her words struck something deep inside John, igniting a spark of determination. He had no choice but to keep fighting, to keep moving forward. The stakes had never been higher. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for the future of the little girl, of the alien mother, and of a universe that was on the brink of chaos. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper underground. The air was colder here, damp and thick with moisture. John could feel the sweat on his forehead despite the chill. They couldn't stop now. They had to keep going. After what felt like an eternity, they reached another cavern. This one was much larger, and it opened up to an underground river, its waters glistening in the faint light that filtered through cracks in the ceiling. On the far side of the river, there was a bridge, rickety wooden structure that seemed to sway with the slightest movement. Beyond the bridge, the path led into the unknown. "There," the alien mother said, pointing to the bridge. "That's the way out. We'll cross, and then we'll be free." John followed her gaze, his heart skipping a beat. They were so close, close to escaping. But as they moved toward the bridge, John heard something that made his blood run cold. The distant roar of the Skaar ships was now deafening. They had found them. They were getting closer. "We need to move faster," John urged, his voice frantic. The alien mother nodded, but there was a strange look in her eyes. It was a look of finality, as though she knew something he didn't, something important. Suddenly, she stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. "John," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you, something that could change everything." John stopped, his breath catching in his throat. "What is it, the child?" she began, her voice trembling. "She is the key to everything, not just for the Amari, but for all of us. She holds the power to stop the Skaar, to end their reign of terror. But she can't do it alone. She needs you. She needs your strength, your courage." John stared at her, trying to process her words. "What are you saying? How can I help her?" The alien mother's gaze softened. "When you protect her, when you fight for her, you unlock the power inside of her. You become part of her journey. Together, you can stop the Skaar, but only if you choose to believe in her." The weight of her words settled over him like a blanket of responsibility. It was more than just protecting a child. It was about believing in something bigger than himself, about fighting for a future that could change the galaxy. John took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll do it. I'll fight for her." Just then, a sharp cry pierced the air. The Skaar had arrived. The first of their ships landed in the distance, and the sound of footsteps and shouting could be heard echoing through the cavern. "Go," the alien mother shouted. "We don't have much time." John grabbed the little girl's hand, pulling her gently toward the bridge. They had no choice now. This was the final choice, the final stand. With the Skaar closing in, John and the alien mother crossed the rickety bridge, their future uncertain but their resolve unbroken. They were running, out of time, But they wouldn't stop. Not now. The battle for their survival and for the galaxy was far from over.